Welcome back. You're still watching Powerlunch Southern Africa. South Africa's labour market remains under pressure with high unemployment on the one hand and rising hiring risk on the other. New data shows that while companies are still recruiting younger workers, they are becoming far more deliberate, using verification and technology to manage risk and protect their businesses. Joining us now to unpack this shift is Jennifer Barkhuizen, Head of Marketing and Talent Insights at Metis. Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So you make the argument that South Africa has a hiring problem, not just a jobs problem. Help us understand how exactly you landed at that conclusion and what's triggered that shift, as it were, towards more deliberate hiring.
Yes, well, if you look at the current economic state, it's quite dire, and I don't think it's going to become, or well, improve much in the coming month with what's happening in the world. And if you look at South African companies, companies are no longer just hiring to fill positions. Companies are making decisions to either not fill positions where people have left, and they are also looking at people taking on more responsibility to fill the gaps within the organization. Now, there's many things that plays part to that. First thing is the economic climate of South Africa, and second of all, it's also technology available to South Africans. I mean, AI is the hot topic of 2026. Now, if you look at people applying for positions, high unemployment is definitely an issue as well in South Africa. If you look at the total number of unemployed people in South Africa, it's millions. And under the youth, it's also quite a high number. It's actually close to 60%. Now, when it comes to companies making a decision of who they hire, they need to make sure that they hire the right person first time around. Because hiring a person not suitable to your organization or somebody that cannot do the job that is available, it doesn't only pose operational risks to organizations, but also financial.
Okay, and we see that your data is also based on more than 3 million background checks done in 2025. What are the most common red flags that you uncovered, and how significant are they in driving hiring decisions today?
Yeah, so looking at the MIE statistics, 3.2 million transactions is quite a lot. And what we've seen is that criminal record verification remains the highest requested check within MIE.
Sure.
And quite a shocking number is actually about 4% of people that is checked for criminal record either don't know they have a criminal record, or they were they're unaware, or they lied about having one. Now that is quite a shocking statistic. When you look at qualification verification, we see the most discrepancies with that. And the reason for that is with, again, technology. It's become quite easy to obtain a falsified document. And that's why it's so essential for organizations not to take anything at face value, but to verify the information that is provided to them by an individual.
Sure, but what about the employees that are already captured in the system? Is there a way of backtracking and verifying or re-verifying their details?
Yes, what we've also seen is that many companies are not just doing a background check when they first hire a person. They are doing re-screening, and that's why it's also important for organizations to have policies in place to make sure that where they state when a person needs to be vetted. Of course, when you onboard that person for the first time, when a decision has been made, and then on an annual basis, biannually, depending on your role and depending on the organization or your industry that you are in. So it is important that people be re-screened when they are employed, because if you've been working for a company 10, 20 years, something might have happened in that time period that didn't show up 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. You made the point that, in the emergence of AI and social media, it has become so easy for companies to verify and do the screenings. But just given that social media and digital footprint screening is on the rise, where should employers, or how should they draw the line between legitimate risk management and overreach?
Yes, that is an interesting topic, one that we can talk quite a lot about. But when it comes to social media screening, so what we've seen in the past is that many organizations would, if you're going through the recruitment process, you will go and search somebody on Facebook or whatever the case might be, and then draw your own conclusions. However, to take bias out of that process is to use an organization like MIE and do a check via that. And remember as well, any background screening check that is done on an individual, consent needs to be given by that person. So if you get a third party using technology, you are not being biased during the process. You are given information that is found on their social media platforms. And a lot of people see that as quite negative, a negative thing to screen on social media. However, it's not really that. They just give you more information on that person. And if there is risks, then you want to know about that beforehand, because, you know, they don't just look at where you were last Friday evening. They look at the type of information that you share. Is there language? Is there violent behavior? Depending on, you know, the type of social media screening check that you do. But ultimately, it can also provide insights as to whether you as an individual will be a cultural fit for that organization.
And this is just through social media?
Yes.
That is interesting. But I just wonder how far back the employer can go with the screening, especially if you have a young worker joining the corporate space.
Yes.
Obviously, the expectation or the common conception would be that they aren't educated. They probably would still need training. And I mean, if you have a 21-year-old joining the corporate ladder or joining a company, chances are they do not have a clean social media background. How do you balance that?
So the information that is used for social media screening is only publicly available information. If you have a private account and, you know, there's a photo that might look a bit suspicious from 10 years ago, if it is private, nobody would see it. But again, the organizations don't go out looking for, again, where you were last Friday night, or, you know, what party you attended, or that type of thing. They're looking for more serious offenses, you know. Is your language discriminatory? Have you posted anything violent, in a violent behavior? You know, what type of information are you putting out there? Because again, that comes back to the organization. If you are hiring somebody with a social media presence and they're quite active and they have strong beliefs on certain topics, depending on your organization, that can really hurt your reputation. Now, as you know, companies take years and millions of rands building their reputation. And if your organization is associated with somebody that has these strong views on certain things, it could damage your reputation quite severely.
Sure. Just before I let you go, I do think that young people aged between 18 to 34, they do make up the bulk of the screening activity. How can employers then protect themselves from risk while still creating fair access to employees, especially for young workers?
Yes, so when it comes to background screening, again, it comes back to organizations having a policy in place.
Okay.
And when you look from an individual's perspective, it's make sure that when you submit, you are honest. When you're honest about your history, don't misrepresent anything, because if it is checked, you will be caught out. And companies are really looking not only for people who has the best qualification. A lot of organizations are also looking for individuals they can develop. Somebody that might have less of a formal qualification, but they are quite adaptable and they are willing to learn. Companies are really taking those people and grooming them and developing them to fit into their organization, and, you know, getting the best out of that, because ultimately then that forms part of the organization and the target that they want to reach, or, you know, what they want to become. Okay. So yeah, from an individual perspective, always be honest. Integrity still matters in today's world, and from a company's perspective, it's really important to make sure that verification is not a skit. It shouldn't be just a tick box of admin and say, yes, we've done it.
Yeah,
really make sure that you go through it, and then ultimately you will end up with the best candidate and you know, less risk for your organization.
Yeah. Just quickly before I let you go, I mean, you did make the point that even for the employers that are already in the system, that are already working for the company, there is a process of rescreening. What then if you're an employer, or you're an employee, sorry, and you have really strong views on a controversial topic? What's the procedure then? Is that a fireable offense?
Well, it really will depend on the organization itself and what policies they have in place.
Okay.
So if you have strong political views and it comes out after you've been employed with the organization, that company can have a conversation with you and say, this is not part of the policy. And, you know, staff needs to be trained on these policies. That's why it's so important that as much as companies have these policies in place, employees should be trained and they should know about what is the do's and the don'ts, because ultimately you are the brand ambassador for your company that you work for. And if it goes against that policy, it could be a fireable offense.
Sure. Jen? Food for thought, but we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there for now. And that was Jennifer Barkhuizen, Head of Marketing and Talent Insights at Metis. We are headed into another short break, and we'll be back with you with more after this.